Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to make a video about the quiz for lesson 9 because it is going to be graded as a quiz. So I want to make sure everybody's understanding how to do it so that you can get the best grade possible. And if you already did it by accident, I opened it up so that you can do it again. So for 1 through 3, you're going to use this graph. And notice it says bar graph of average monthly rainfall in Manaus, Brazil. And you know that the bars are going to represent rainfall in millimeters, and the x-axis is going to represent the months. So some couple takeaways you should notice. Okay, I'm noticing the bar for March is really high. It's over 300 millimeters. And the bar for August is really low. It's just over 50 milliliters. So I should be able to use that information to help me answer these first 3 questions. The next part is not about Manaus, Brazil anymore. Now we're going to talk about Santiago, Chile. And if the graph is too small for you to see, you can hit Control+ on your keyboard and zoom in a little bit. Or if you're on a phone, there are ways for you to make that bigger. So this is a little bit more complicated. We're still talking about rainfall, but we're also talking about a couple of other variables here. The x-axis, we still have the months. We're still comparing months. But we're also looking at maximum and minimum temperature. So if I get a question about rainfall, I'm looking at the light blue bars and I'm looking at this side which says rainfall. So if it's like how much rainfall is there in May, I look at May, I look at the bars, and then I go to this side and I see it's a little bit above 60 millimeters. If I'm asked about the maximum temperature, I'm going to look at the red line, and I'm not going to look at this side, I'm going to look at the other side. So if I'm asked what was the maximum temperature in December, I'm looking at the red line and I see it's a little bit under 30 degrees Celsius. Now, there's also a minimum temperature. You might notice that when you go outside, it's not the same temperature all day. It might be cooler in the morning, it might be warmer in the early afternoon. So you might have also a minimum temperature, the lowest possible temperature. So even though it got up to almost 30 degrees in December, the lowest temperature was 10 degrees Celsius. Now, something you're going to be thinking about is, wait a second, the highest it got in terms of rainfall, the highest amount of rainfall was only a little bit over 80 millimeters. Whereas back in Manaus in Brazil, I think that's how you pronounce it, the highest they got was over 300 millimeters. So Brazil got over 300 millimeters. Santiago, Chile got only a little bit over 80. That's a big difference. Santiago is much drier than Manaus. And it asks you about why you think that is in the last question. And I want to hear your responses, but something you might want to do is look at a map of South America. This line over here is the equator. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Control+, there you go. This is the equator, which might also be why this country is called Ecuador, because it's near the equator. And if you zoom in, Manaus, the city we were talking about, is right below the equator. It's right near there. So something you might want to think about is, that's where the sun's directly hitting. It must be really hot. So the water in these rivers, in the ocean, is going to evaporate and cause a lot of rain. But as I go south, and I'm further away from the equator and closer to the South Pole, I get all the way down here to Santiago, Chile, it must be a little bit drier. It's not getting as much direct sunlight, so not as much water is evaporating. So you're not going to get as much rain. Another issue is, remember we learned about Peru? There's Peru up here. And you remember Peru had a cold ocean current coming from the South Pole, and that's why it was really dry in the south. So not only is Santiago further from the equator, and that's why it's drier, it also has that cold ocean current coming from the South Pole, which is not too far down. It's actually right below there. So those are a couple of reasons why you can say Santiago is going to be a little bit more dry. It's not going to get as much rain as Manaus, which is right here on the equator. Fun fact, there is a city that's actually directly on the equator. It's called Quito, and it's in Ecuador. See, it's right there, and I am sure it is extremely hot when it is summer in South America. All right, guys, please message me if you have any questions about the quiz for 9, and try your best, and stay safe and healthy.